So that's interesting. The writers that I have always sort of admired most, that really drew me in as a reader, as a child and growing up and wanting to become a writer, the ones who really inspired me were all dead writers. They weren't living. Partly because I think I grew up in a household with 2 English professors or English scholars, and they were specialists in works that were written by people who are long dead. So I think I had Shakespeare was my first love. I was a big Shakespeare nerd as a kid. And so I think there was, for me, this sense that like great literature was like already made, had been done. And it took me some time, I think, until, I'm sure I figured it out by the time I was in high school or college, that like, oh no, like people write now, there's an active world of literary production happening all the time. But I think it's made me a little bit shy about talking to fellow writers, because I still feel like a book is something written by someone whose life is over. So it's very strange to think about. I mean, I talk to writers all the time, and I attend events where writers read aloud from their work, and I read aloud from my work at events. So I'm fully aware that it's happening all the time around me, but I think it's easier to feel deeply engaged with the work as work on the page, rather than as a thing that a person made,
Do you think that's going to get harder, or it's getting harder because there is a sense of this need in our culture now that we have like video access and like instant access to people? And I wonder if that idea is being threatened.
The sort of demand for access is obviously present, and the question is, from readers wanting to see their idols or their just writers they admire, wanting to be able to see them in person or hear from them on the internet. I guess I don't think we have to respond to that demand. I'm not sure. I want to be generous, and I want to be fully myself as much as I can be, publicly and privately. But first of all, no one's really asking for much from me. So this is like all very theoretical. But I think about other writers who do have those demands, who are being asked to do everything all the time, give readings, give lectures, tour. And I think it must be very hard to decide what to say yes and no to, because probably the instinct is to say no to everything because you want to defend your time. I certainly feel that you want to keep time for writing, which takes so much more time than just the time it takes to read a sentence. Writing a sentence takes infinitely longer than reading one. And so it's important to defend that time. But you also want to, you don't want to let that defensive posture make you a cold, unloving person. And I think there is a risk of being an unloving person if you're saying no to everything all the time. So you want to be able to say yes, as just kind of an open-hearted gesture, And so I imagine people who are asked to do things all the time. The balance is probably very tricky to find.
What were we talking about? Like just the role of the author and them being a sort of ghost, historical ghost.
Well, the ghost author is so interesting too now with this like Ferrante fever that has taken the literary world by storm. I mean, we don't know who she is, right? And that's like the source of much consternation to many. There's like this sort of demand to know who she is. If we're gonna invest all this time with her, like her work, we should have a sense of like where it comes from, like what, who this authority is that we're trusting basically by reading her work. But she's written about why she's kept her identity a secret, or kept herself out of publicity, and really it's mostly because she just doesn't think she has anything to add to the work that the work could not say for itself. And that's a bit of a cheat, right? Like, of course she could add, she could tell you a little bit about, where she wrote it, how long it took her, and she does do that in her interviews, more and more, without disclosing who she is as a private person. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's a really, she's kind of directly challenging this contemporary notion we have that like we have to be talking about our work and like and commenting on it, subtweeting about it all the time. And so she really feels, I think part of why people are so drawn to her, she really feels like a voice from the past. It's almost like these books were uncovered, like someone discovered them 40 years after her death. She almost feels like a dead author. And so there is more freedom to comment on them and to share them and read them, I think, within the literary world or among readers, because she's really no different from Shakespeare or Virginia Woolf to us, I think. We trust her authority implicitly somehow because of the writing. The writing is so strong, and the right people have recommended her to us, Well,
maybe because we don't have a sense of her as a person, we can't understand that she has, like, flaws and insecurities, because she's not like a body. She's not a real thing.
Yeah.
Right? You meet an author and you're like their hair was really messed up.
Yeah.
I don't know if
or the hair was too nice.
I don't know if I trusted like judgment about like this thing in the book.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can help that. I think like even really smart and thoughtful people and empathetic people do that. And I know I've done that, I'm sure, subconsciously, where you're like, I got a weird vibe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And that sucks.
I mean, she also is writing about she writes a great deal about the body and about very personal things, relationships between parents and their children. And if there's a strong autobiographical thread to all her novels, but, particularly the My Brilliant Friend, or there's a strong tendency to read them autobiographically. It is like you almost cannot help yourself as a reader. And so, in a way, the first obvious thing to say would be like she's protecting her privacy, right? She's actually writing about her real like friends and family, and she wants to keep their privacy safe and hers as well. But there is also that idea that maybe we can only really write meaningfully about the body or about the very physical, emotional world that we all inhabit if we are kind of invisible. I mean, plenty of writers have done it, and they've been visible. But she's taking this experiment in an interesting direction, I think.
I'm wondering if you would talk more about autobiography, maybe in regards to like your own writing or just what you think about like how the stuff of your life, your memory, your history, like your present, how that, or if that gets into your writing, like what do you do and how do you deal with that? Or general or specific thoughts are good.
Yeah, I sort of have this will be probably an ongoing like battle for me my whole life as a writer, is to what extent is it interesting or right or like just to draw from one's own personal material. On the one hand, it's like the greatest source that every one of us has. It's a wonderful source, and each person's is unique. And so, as a writer, you kind of there's a very strong temptation, I think, to draw from what only you know, right? And what only you know is your own experience. But I think there's also quite a bit of eye-rolling and like negative response to autobiographical writing. It's like, oh, he's just talking about himself, or like she's just like working out her own problems, like there's no art here at all. It's just like totally self-involved, And so I think it's hard to, and also the idea that, that you might expose or embarrass someone in your life, either who you're close to or who maybe you hate. And either way, there's a sort of responsibility and an ethic there that you have to confront, whether you're writing fiction or poetry or, in any genre, I think. So I think it's like kind of a necessary conversation to have with yourself. I have to admit, I really admire the writers who can like nakedly and like boldly and like angrily draw from their own life. It's like, damn, like you just went for it. Like you are so brave. And like the work is like way better because you did that. But I'm also very interested in experiences that are not my own. And so I find myself very excited at the challenge to kind of like live another life, through fiction, like imagine another life that overlaps with mine in many meaningful ways and that I can relate to in a lot of ways, but that is also totally alien to me. So I tend to blend, like I do both. I feel like one day I'll probably write something like really like straightly autobiographical, and like I probably will lose all my friends and family. And maybe I won't publish it. Like maybe I just won't publish it, or I'll publish it under an Italian surname. But the temptation is great. So it's just a question of like finding the courage, I think.
I think it seems, I'm hesitant to call it a trend, but I think there's a lot of this work that's happening now, and I think it's really exciting. It is also interesting to try to like figure out what your own alchemy is in terms of how much of the truth you tell and what at what moments in your life, like, what truth is important to
Yeah,
tell?
well, that's the question. What's the important truth, right?
Yeah.
Because there can be things that preoccupy us for long stretches that, like, we actually just really need to kind of, like, get over, you know? For some people, I think writing is a way to get over it. Absolutely. So it's a process to kind of exercise some demons or something. But yeah, I think the question you have to ask yourself with any project, whether it's autobiographical or whether it's research driven or what have you, is, you know, is this subject important? Is this a subject that will keep me interested, right? And will it? And am I saying something new? I mean, I don't think every writer cares about that, but I care about that very much. And by new, I don't mean necessarily adding new information to a body of knowledge or like a discussion. I mean, maybe just turning the axis a little bit through which we're regarding this subject. And so, yeah, I think personal stories, personal testimonials can be really powerful in that regard. But they are also everywhere, you know, like it's not actually like we're lacking for first person narratives of abuse or violence or you know, pain or, you know, depression or, you know, like all the time we see this on, you know, on the internet, you know, like we need more people telling the truth. Like, well, actually I think we hear them. We have to actually just like use those truths to like create a better world, you know.
Right, listen to them.
Yeah. Like, they're there. They're actually everywhere. You know, it's just that for some people, like, I think reading them or like having written them is maybe enough. Like, you know, at a certain point, those truths need to be like moved in an activist direction, you know. And not to say that I think that all writing needs to be activism. That's like a ridiculously bold, like, general statement. But I do think addressing the ailments of our social world is like a really important thing for me. In writing, and or the kind of fiction that I tend to gravitate towards or tend to want to create myself. But I think, you know, we can address some of those societal ills through first person confessions and also through or first person testimonials, but also through totally imagined worlds and spaces.